the bailout, the auto industry, they have submitted their plans for what they need in a bailout. And one of the things that I found very interesting that Ford did today, Alan Mulally, the CEO of Ford, chairman of Ford, said that Ford wants a $9 billion line of credit. They want no money now. They don't want to draw. They want to be able to have money that they can draw down on in an emergent way at a later date, which is very different than this sort of haphazard way that the auto industry went to Washington 2 weeks ago to say, well, this is how much we need, and we got to get back on our private planes now. It's very different, and Mulally is apparently driving from Detroit to Washington. And this auto industry bailout leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. But one thing you have to remember about the auto industry, people are going to blame the big salaries, people are going to blame the union power, people are going to, if the Americans made cars that people wanted to buy, it wouldn't matter how much power the union had, it wouldn't matter how much the CEOs were making, none of that would matter, because we'd be selling cars and moving cars. If we can renegotiate those CAFE standards, if we can start getting American cars competitive again, then we're going to be in a place where it's not going to matter who's to blame for what's going on in the auto industry. We just have to make good cars. Nobody cares. You weren't screaming about the unions when Americans were making good cars. And, you were to an extent, I'm sure there are some people that were, but it was a lot less fiery for sure. So one thing that I think they need a commitment from, the Congress needs a commitment from these auto companies, is that they're going to make better cars, that they're going to keep up with the cars that are being made all over the world that are outselling. People are not buying American cars because there's so much union power and Alan Mulally's taking a nice paycheck. It has nothing to do with that. So I thought it was interesting that Ford said that. Ford said they have enough money to get them through the crisis, but they need a little emergency account. If they have enough money, why do they need an emergency account? You could ask that question. But in order to plan things, you have to be able to have a way of bailing yourself out of trouble if the crisis worsens. But going back to that is what I think is so important about these bailouts, and why I don't think of them as just handouts. That having American ownership of the American auto companies to a degree is not the worst thing in the world. There are so many people that are employed by these auto companies, going from technicians and car repair people in the shops, all the way up to the dealerships themselves, to the people who obviously put the cars together. But let's not even forget about the people who own the diner next to the factory or next to the dealership, who are also going to be put out of business. We have to save the American auto companies, and I believe that completely. I believe it more than I do certainly with a lot of the banks, because banks are much more easily replaced. It's not easy to replace GM, Ford, and Chrysler. I don't think of them as a three-headed monster. I think of them as three different entities, and I think as they go to Congress, they have to present themselves in that way, because if they don't, it's just going to be looking like a conglomerate coming to Congress again. I think they made a huge mistake by coming to Congress together. Though I was talking about this with a friend last night, I do think that, and you must think that I have really great conversations with my friends. We were talking about the auto bailout. We were also talking about the fact that the 49ers beat the Bills, if that makes any difference to you, because that was great also. And they did, and they're the only team from the West Coast to go to the East Coast and win a game this year. They're 4-8, but just put that in your pocket and remember that. But they probably looked at what the banks did when the banks went to Congress, and the banks saw that some of them were treated differently when they went individually. Lehman was treated differently than Bear Stearns, which was treated differently than AIG. So I understand why they didn't go up there together, but why they did go up there together. But I do think that it's important to look at these as three different groups, and I think Ford is setting themselves apart. It'll be interesting to see. I think it'll be interesting for the markets to see what happens to those stock prices. And a lot, I think Barack Obama is going to make it a priority to keep those jobs in Detroit and keep those auto companies going. But I do think that there has to be some kind of a demand from the Congress that we make better cars and we have better fuel efficiency. And we are able to compete both electrically and in a hybrid way with the cars that are coming from Japan. And I think that we have to see that happen.